I'm Ezra Raya reporting on the hottest issues and the biggest stories. This is the Manila Times. The Regional Tripartite Wages and Productivity Board has approved an increase of 40 pesos in the daily minimum wage, a 7% increase on the previous base pay. Wage Order number NCR-24 will take effect on July 16 and is expected to benefit around 1.1 million minimum wage workers in Metro Manila alone, according to the Department of Labor and Employment. This came after the initial 750 pesos proposed across the board hike from the lower house and was then followed by 150 pesos hike in the Senate. And to now, a less than $1 increase for our low wage workers. Is this enough? Let's hear more from the Trade Union Congress of the Philippines, Legislative Officer from the Office of the Deputy Speaker, Carlos Miguel Oñate. Welcome to the Manila Times, sir.
Thank you very much, and it's our pleasure to be here.
Sir, 40 pesos wage increase, is this enough?
While the 40 pesos minimum wage increase given by the NCR Regional Wage Board will help around 1.1 million minimum wage earners in the National Capital Region, we are gravely disappointed of the fact that the 40 pesos wage increase is too little and too late, when in fact we know that the 570 pesos lost 88 pesos purchasing power to inflation. That 40 pesos wage increase is not even half of the 88 pesos purchasing power loss to inflation. Second, the 40 pesos wage increase that will put the minimum wage to 610 pesos, still cannot feed nutritious food for our families, when in fact the DOST, Pinggang Pinoy, based on 2019 prices for a daily healthy food requirement for a family of 5, says that it needs 917 pesos. And ultimately, this is way below. The 610 pesos is way below and no way near the family living wage enshrined in the Constitution and the Wage Rationalization Act that is estimated at around 1,160 pesos. So the TUCP, through our Deputy Speaker Mendoza, will continue the struggle for wage recovery and living wages in Congress.
Sir, what is the suggested amount for the wage hike? So what is the suggested amount by the TUCP, sir?
The TUCP, as you have all known, filed through the legislation an across-the-board 150 wage recovery increase. It seeks to recover the lost purchasing power to inflation and for more than 3 decades of dismal track record of the regional wage boards, in order that our minimum wages finally go side by side with productivity growth. Because if you would check, in 2017, a worker in the NCR contributes around 1.1 million to the regional GDP, when in fact annual minimum wage in NCR at that time is just around 130,000 pesos. So the productivity pay gap is so wide and so unjust. So we want to push for the 150 pesos wage recovery increase, and in better times, we should continue the struggle for the true family living wages.
Sir, one of the concern of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, the employers po, is that the higher the minimum pay, it will be followed by the loss of small businesses who are paying minimum wage workers. So what do you think of this po?
For every wage increase and for every discussion about wages, we have always heard those business closures, job losses, inflation, etc., etc. But we would always say that both history and studies and experience disprove all this. We would just like to note that wage hikes do not necessarily lead to business closures and job losses and inflation, because we would like them to disabuse the mindset of our social partners and employers that wage hikes are just additional production costs, when in fact, wage hikes can be seen as a source of demand that would increase workers' productivity, increase their purchasing power in order to pump prime our economy as we encounter domestic and global headwinds. Let me also point out about wage hikes leading to the closures of micro and small enterprises. We recognize that legitimate concern, but we would like to point out that the wage boards itself set out the mechanisms for them to ask for exemptions. And if you look back to our 150 pesos wage hike bill, we provide for wage recovery subsidy for our micro and small enterprises, those that cannot comply with the wage order. Thirdly, ultimately about inflation, because that has been the main case that if we increase workers' wages, that would also increase the prices, etc., etc. The fact of the matter is, it is not workers' wages that are already low and further depressed by inflation that is the root cause of inflation. We know that there are two, food and electricity inflation. So we urge our social partners and employer side that let us work together to urge our economic managers to work triple time on addressing food and electricity inflation, because we understand that workers and employers cannot endlessly haggle over workers' wages when in fact the fundamental root causes of inflations are not addressed by our economic managers.
Sir, lastly, so is the TUCP pushing for another wage hike on top of the 40 pesos?
The Wage Rationalization Act provides that the one year period for a minimum wage increase order to not be disturbed unless there is supervening event. If you would recall, since last year, we have urged the regional wage boards to issue a wage order in light of the record high inflation, which they did not. That's why they provided us with too little and too late 40 pesos. So the DUCP will continue the struggle for another wage increase, this time the 150 pesos truly wage recovery increase in Congress. We are very optimistic this time because the Senate President is the one who filed the bill in Senate for the 150, and we have already approved this in principle in the Senate, and we look forward to the TWG in the Senate, and we look forward to the progress sa House of Representatives for our across-the-board 150 pesos wage increase.
All right, thank you so much for that, Sir. Trade Union Congress of the Philippines Legislative Officer Carlos Miguel Oñate. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po at mabuhay po.